welcome to Two Guys Talking AI. My name is Kevin Jaskaliak, CEO of Unisense, and I am joined again by my good friend and CEO of Unisense, Bharat Vijay. Today is a really special Two Guys Talking AI podcast. Traditionally we've done tours in Palo Alto. We've talked about pretty much everything under the sun on merchandising and retail domestically. But today we're going international, and we're going to discuss the impact of AI on the job market in India. How are you doing today, Bharat?
Hey, doing great, Kevin. I had to make a trip to Bangalore, and I'm really excited today to introduce Mekin Maheshwari to all our listeners. A little background about Mekin. He's the founder of the Udhyam Learning Foundation. And prior to Udhyam, Mekin and I go back more than 20 years. We were together at Yahoo, and many of his innovations are part of Yahoo's stack. And he went on after that to do successful startups, and he was one of the early folks at Flipkart. And he made a jump from the technology side to the human side, creating tens of thousands of jobs in Flipkart, and then going on to enable millions of folks at Udhyam. So he's really made the jump from a career in technology to enabling jobs using the scale that he learned in tech and many other things. Mekin, how are you doing? Welcome to Two Guys Talking AI.
Hi, Bharat. Hi, Kevin. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm doing very well. Thank you. And you're too kind, Bharat. I learned a lot. Bharat was my first manager, and I learned a lot from him, especially around how to build teams. And I think I carried that forward. I still don't think I am able to do as much as he can for the teams he leads, but I tried. And I did get, I was super fortunate to be at Yahoo, and then the Flipkart journey for about 7 years was fantastic to join a startup in the garage state, what in Bangalore would be called in a 2-bedroom house, right? And go from there to being a 35,000 people company was just fascinating. Lots of lessons, lots of learnings. And then shifting over to what I do now at Udhyam, which is try and help young people become entrepreneurial, young people in schools between grades 9 and 12, and do that in partnership with state governments. So do it in government schools, done by government school teachers, reaching about 2.9 million kids as of this March. And we also work with street vendors, and that's a much smaller scale, newer initiative where we've helped street vendors grow their business. One of the simpler examples of what we've helped them do is help folks who iron your clothes move from coal to LPG as an energy source for about 6,000 of them. Seems like a technology shift that was made 40 years back in most of our kitchens. But it's still not caught up in many parts of the country. So helping make that shift happen. Those are the two things that Udhyam mostly does. And that remains the endeavor. How can people be more entrepreneurial?
That's great. And go ahead, bro.
That's really phenomenal. I think just the kind of jobs that you've enabled, and I think that's one of the areas of interest for us, which we'll come to during the talk today, is in the end, it's about jobs. AI is playing a role, but it would be great to know how this job creation you've done can potentially be scaled to other countries as well.
Sure.
Bharat, before we move forward, I don't think a lot of people in the United States know the magnitude of Flipkart. So can you talk a little bit about? I mean, you told me about it, and I knew about it, but really, what is Flipkart, and what is the comparison in the United States?
Yeah, so Flipkart's an e-commerce company. I think comparable is Amazon, and Amazon also exists in India. And despite Amazon existing in India for what, 12 plus years now, Flipkart continues to be the leading e-commerce company. Flipkart was partially acquired by Walmart for about a value of $22 billion in 2017. I think the last few funding rounds, if I remember right, valued Flipkart at around somewhere between 40 and $50 billion. So yeah, it's a massive e-commerce company, one of the largest startups that have come out of India so far.
Yeah, and again, I don't put you. I don't want to put you on the spot to kind of blow your own horn, but the reality of it is this isn't this isn't a small startup that sells books. This thing is massive, and it's amazing. It's to compete against Amazon and to be valued at that kind of valuation is amazing. So, again, congratulations, and what I told Bharat, I'm super excited about you being here, and so I guess let me kick this thing off, and so in the previous podcast we discussed how AI in some cases is really severely impacting the job market in the United States. We found that AI could replace the equivalent of 300 million full-time jobs. And not in 20 years, but in the next 2 years. And more specifically, AI is replacing, in the next year and a half, almost 2 million manufacturing jobs. These stats are huge and they're scary. I mean, let's face it. And that's one of the reasons why we want to address it. And, one of the things that we really want to focus on with two guys talking AI is that, AI is not going away, but it also isn't this evil beast that lives in the closet that everybody should be scared of. It's one of those things that is going to occur. I guess a great example is, being back at realtor.com, the internet was going to replace realtors. That was the big fear. But guess what? There's more realtors now than there ever was, when realtor.com opened. So the reality of it is how to kind of change and morph with the emergence of technology. But as we always get, we get quite a few questions and quite a few comments. And one of the comments that was brought up by one of our followers, and Bharat and I thought this was really interesting, is really, how is AI impacting the market in other countries? And, they talked about Europe and Asia, but one thing they were really interested in, again, I don't know a lot of details on our followers, but they really wanted to talk about India. And so, what I thought, Megan, is that I'd open up by asking you a question. And it's kind of our, open question every time we start this is, starting at this 100,000 foot question or the 100,000 foot kind of discussion, being a leader in technology and business, how do you see AI affecting the job market overall in India today and maybe in the next 2 years?
Thank you for the question, Kevin. I think you took me quite high up there, 100,000 feet. So I'll start from talking about overall job market in India first, and then talk about AI. Something that may not be known to a lot of people is that India does not have a large number of formal jobs. Right? So of the people who work in India, about 7% of them are in what you would call a formal job. 93% of them are in operate as free agents, operate as entrepreneurs. So whether you're a farmer, you're a trader, you're a craftsperson, you're a casual labor, you have what are now called gig jobs. You don't necessarily have formal jobs as we think of them. So just in terms of numbers of people and number of jobs, I think 7% of India's workforce is still a fairly large number of people. right? But in terms of the overall impact on the country, in terms of number of people that get impacted or percentage of people that get impacted, that's small. That said, the economic impact of AI and the richer or the more paying jobs do get impacted by AI quite a bit, right? There are research reports that talk about 26% of India's jobs are highly exposed to AI. From what I have seen, and just the distinction between, because AI is based on, and today, primarily based on language models and information, uh, while a large number of jobs are in the atom space, so not bits and bytes, but physical stuff. And AI is not directly impacting the physical stuff. AI is helping them possibly function better. So the translation of that would still take some time. Uh, for example, AI's impact on farming is mostly going to come through farmers learning more because AI is able to solve for translation brilliantly. That knowledge that exists about how to treat, say, a disease or how to rejuvenate your soil in English, in Hindi, the more popular languages, but it does not exist in Odia, which is one of the states in the eastern side of the country where my wife is from. Uh, for farmers in Odisha, now there are AI-based telephone systems that help those farmers solve their farming problems and challenges using the translation that's powered by AI. So I think it's not as direct an impact on a large majority of the jobs in India, but AI helping the larger majority of jobs slowly become more efficient. Um, and I think the what you brought up towards the end, right? That as in you now have more realtors. I feel like AI should help us become more imaginative. So artificial intelligence combined with human imagination could help us, right, imagine much better futures, hopefully for all, or hopefully for the many, than just like for the few. So yeah, the areas where I have seen direct impact already in our tech startup VC ecosystem spaces include content. So content marketing, social media, I think those are spaces where I have seen teams shrink quite a bit because AI is actually able to do writing of copy, creation of images, analyzing stuff really, really well. I've seen very positive impact in health. And I feel in general, health staff, uh, India is severely understaffed, but so is the world, that the world could use more doctors and more nurses. And I feel like AI will reduce the pressure on the doctors and nurses that we have today and help them become more productive. So translation, health, content, those are three areas that I see significant impact of AI already and in the short term, in the next couple of years.
No, that's great. It's interesting. Before we started this, I was telling Bharat that I've done extensive research on the job market in India, and again, at least at this point, the agricultural industry isn't seeing the impact. However, in the United States, we're seeing startups come up every day that are in the ag industry that are helping increase yield, reduce pesticides, um, reduce water usage, which is humongous in California. So I think that's huge. So it was a great answer. So Bharat, I'm going to ask you a question, and again, I'm going to have you be the bad guy here. We talked before that in the United States, you did this list of, and that was probably the most talked about area of our last podcast, where you started listing jobs that are going to be impacted. And so, similar to what you talked about in the United States, can you give your thoughts of the differences in India and where do you see today a direct impact on jobs in India, either similar to the United States or completely different, that are going to be directly impacted by AI today?
Yeah, I think just taking the lead from Mekin's really deep answer on that. I think one of the areas is sort of the more higher end IT and software services, and also a lot of the call center work that's happening. There's a possibility that because many of these things can be done by AI, there's a possibility that these jobs are going to shift to a different part of the interaction. But I still feel that that's only a possibility, and I think AI has the ability to to really create new related markets. But I feel the IT and software side, there is AI will start automating many routine tasks. So there's going to be a significant push towards upskilling and reskilling. I think on the agriculture side, um, just the ability to, there's so many companies that are doing drone-based monitoring. I think some of these can actually free up the farmers and help them increase their yield. And I think so the jobs will shift from some of the areas where they're spending a lot of time on monitoring to moving from monitoring to to other things. And there's also a lot of individual farming that's coming up in India right now. Um, People are using hydroponics, and it's a very early segment. It's more urban than rural, so I would be surprised if it's even a drop in the bucket. But there's a lot of agriculture happening in that area where AI can actually play a really important role in enabling that individual farmer. Um, the other area, I think healthcare AI is going to play a big role. One is AI-based diagnostics can now be available at scale. And I think India will really benefit from that. I see actually the health index potentially going up. And I see a lot of, while some jobs may get displaced, I see a lot of jobs being created in reaching these products, these AI-based products to folks in India. So I see that the one of the biggest things I see AI potentially doing is deepening the rural urban divide in some areas, but then bringing it closer together in others. Because for the first time, you have a very patient teacher that has a lot of information and that's democratized and everyone has access to. And as Mekin said, it's translated into every language. So anybody with any language can ask the AI engine questions and learn. And that information is now available across the rural urban divide. But at the same time, urban areas may benefit more from AI related job creation. So that's those are some of the areas that I feel uh, long winded answer, but hopefully touched on a few things.
No, that's great. And again, what I really want to show, and I want to show that there is a pattern, right? And I mean, regardless of what country we're talking about or what industry, there is this pattern of where AI can impact job markets. And one thing you brought up earlier, Bharat, and this is on a different podcast, was anything that's repetitive. You have to see that, there's an opportunity for that. And call centers could be a big could get hit really hard because of the fact that before, well, 5 years ago, 2 years ago, and 3 years ago, um, that awful tree that we fell into, press one, press two, press three, that no longer exists. Now you actually ask your question or talk about your problem, and AI is willing or is able to uh, decipher your question and actually, based on your data, give you the answer. So I think it's huge. So I mean, I think that's another great answer to kind of a loaded question, but not really. And I think no matter where we have this conversation, it could be in Europe, Asia, Australia, name it. We're going to see a pattern of where the introduction of AI can start impacting the job market as we see it today. Um, so let me shift gears here. So what you're doing now is pretty amazing. You have emerged in the education space. So have you seen the impact of AI in education, and either negative or positive? This is a purely you know thrown out question, but I've heard comments of how AI is impacting the education space. You being 100% in it, what do you see today of the impact of AI? And again, feel free to talk about the positives and negatives that you see today.
Yeah. I think this is an area that there is significant impact already, and an area that I think about and worry a little bit. So firstly, the positives, right? I am super excited uh, by access and democratization of information that AI helps with. So AI coupled with its translation capabilities, I think is already creating access access of information for a very large number of people. I think one of my largest worries continues to be that AI is trained on existing data and is hence majoritarian, right? So that means everything that's happening on the fringe, which is trying to change how we live today or how we operate today, is actually not yet fully developed in AI. So if you ask an AI or tell an AI that a doctor and a nurse eloped together, the AI is going to assume that the doctor is a male and the nurse is female, because that's the kind of data that the AI has been trained on, right? So whether it's gender biases, whether it's caste biases, it's racism, I think a whole lot of that, uh, as an AI, will give us what it has been fed. And it's hard for AI to overcome its biases, which means that unless there is proactive measures and people think about that, hey, what AI is telling us is not always the truth or the best for how do we progress forward. And if education starts adopting AI without thinking a lot about these aspects, we might just uh, reduce the pace of development and human change. Right? So AI could help accelerate the democratization, but reduce the pace at which we do newer things and better things in future. I think one other area that I see a lot of people worry about, and I see it in actually, I presented some of this data, was use of AI for student submissions and examinations. Right. So if, and when you, so the data I was presenting was the usage of ChatGPT graphs or GenAI graphs, and you see a massive drop during vacation times, right, when there is no homework. So students use AI to do their homework. And our education systems aren't designed for figuring out what can the human plus AI combination do. Our assessments, our examinations, what is expected. And we have not yet thought about, hey, how do we change our curricula? How do we think about, hey, what should a young person be able to do with or without AI? So just like with internet, what can young people do? Or with scientific calculators, what young people can do, versus trying to see, oh, what can the young person do alone? And I feel like that's an area that requires significant shift. I don't think enough people are thinking or talking about, hey, how does education change when students have the power of AI? I think most people are still talking about how do we get students to not use AI so that we can assess their capability. I don't think that's a positive approach to using a tool that's on our hands. I feel like those are the two largest areas. I'm happy to talk about more or build up on either of these, Kevin.
Well, it's funny because you brought that up, and then, I read an article where um, the introduction of AI in the education space has opened up a new vertical in tech development. And basically, it's the ability to analyze documents that students submit and be able to segment or disseminate what is real, what is AI, And now it's well, this is going to sound ridiculous, but it's AI
versus
proof
AI.
AI. Exactly. So, what AI is doing is it's looking at the document that someone submitted, and they're able to look at patterns of language, word placement, words used, and then go back and exactly what you said, look at the database and say, well, uh, I don't think Kevin wrote what Edgar Allan Poe wrote in the same, verbiage, word usage pattern. I find that interesting. So when we talk about the fear of AI and how it's going to take everybody's job, that's a perfect example of, a new emerging technology and industry in order to combat the use of AI in the education space. But no, I think it's really interesting. And what researchers have done on it, and Bharat, please jump in. The idea of AI on the administrative side of education, the ability to uh, score exams, evaluate those type of things, put together lesson plans that before would take a summer to put together, now takes 2 weeks to put together. And you're not only putting together a lesson plan, you're putting the lesson plan together based on, I'm making something up here, Harvard professors, where before you didn't have that ability. So, there's definitely the positive and negatives of it. But I think it's in the next, unfortunately, I'd love to say the next 5 years, but how this technology is developing in the next 6 months, we're going to see, everything just change. And I think for the student, and I don't know if any students really going to listen to this, but beware, because the emergence of proofing technology with the use of AI is going to be a lot more powerful than you asking to write an essay on the construction of the Golden Gate Bridge. So, I think that's I think it's really interesting. And you actually talked about something that kind of leads into my next question. And I'm going to open this up for both of you guys. So, we talk about how AI is getting into the educational space, and this is and bear with me because I went all the way around the block and we're getting back to the job market. But we talked about the education space. Where do both of you guys see the impact of AI, and how is the industry approaching it with kind of the evaluation of candidates? And so, uh, we've done everything, and we've all done these things where you need to submit something, you have to do a test, you have to do 15 interviews, um, submit a story about yourself and your family and your biggest fears. With the introduction of AI, how do you think that's kind of affecting the evaluation of incoming candidates to jobs? And again, I don't know if I'm asking this right, so help me out, because you can tell I'm struggling a little bit, but I can see where it affects the education space. But now I'm a recruiter or I'm a hiring agent and I have 5 candidates. How does AI affect me selecting the right candidate? And again, I don't think I'm asking this correctly, but both you guys can help me out because you guys are a lot smarter than I am. So jump in and kind of pick up where I threw all these breadcrumbs on the floor and kind of put together a kind of an answer to the kind of the disseminated question I threw out there.
Yeah, so the way I was seeing it is the world's been trying to automate the job screening and scanning resumes and buying for so long. They've definitely made some inroads. So I guess the question is the ability to, right from finding a candidate to pruning the list, is that going to change a lot? And is there an impact that India is potentially going to either potentially benefit from or otherwise?
Yeah, I feel like I see a lot of possibilities of change, of things becoming a lot more efficient. So, for example, you no longer have to just depend on, say, the resume that the candidate has shared. You can ask AI, can you please summarize on social media or on GitHub or all other public places where this person has made contributions, right? And use all of that for a candidate evaluation, which is really, really hard to do as a recruiter. But now AI can do all of that job for you and then provide a neat comparative summary of these 5 candidates that you were looking at and help you make much better decisions. So I think from an information point of view, and this is stuff that AI is good at, uh, you can make a lot of progress. On the other hand, as I was hiring, a key piece that I would look at is how do people approach problems. And now you have to start changing that to how do people approach problems with AI as a tool. So the problem sets have to change, right? And we know in campus interviews and in often in job interviews, there are books written about like, oh, these are the most common questions. These are the most common problems, and they keep getting repeated. AI is very good at understanding all of this and then being able to answer those for you. So we can continue to assess people in the sterile environment of, hey, don't use AI and give me an answer to this question, right? Put you in a sterile meeting room and then ask you questions. Or we could ask people to build stuff to solve hard problems with the use of AI. So I feel like a lot has to happen on how do people start changing the assessment processes. Because I feel like it's futile to just continue to use the old processes. So while AI is developing really, really fast, I don't think our education or HR processes uh, are keeping pace with it, and not enough organizations are thinking about this. And I feel like the organizations that do think about this and make those changes will leap forward quite rapidly in how does assessment and recruitment happen.
Again, that's really, I just love where you were going with that. So clearly, your viewpoint is not to kind of throttle people's use of AI, but to really bring it in and just be open and see where it goes.
Yeah, I like while I am an optimist, and I generally think about, hey, what can go well with the world. I do. I have 2 teenage kids, and I do worry about. So my worries about education are actually not as much from education, but the distractions and addictions that become possible with AI, right? And with unregulated setup of like games that can draw kids in and suck them up totally and get them addicted. Uh, and I don't think we have yet started thinking about online addictions like we think about addictions in the offline world. Or think about, hey, how should regulation happen for online addiction? And I know, I think a couple of years back, China started regulating, and it felt like, hey, were they being too heavy-handed on online gaming companies and online education companies? But over time, I have at least started thinking that, hey, we do have to think about these as addictions and deal with them like you would deal with addictions. And I don't know if there are easy answers to that. So education will struggle because kids are distracted and addicted, and not so much because, hey, AI cannot do much in education. AI can do a lot in education.
In fact, you touched upon something in all the jobs we've talked about being created through AI. The whole we've talked about AI policy jobs being created, but never we haven't really thought about the jobs that we created that make AI a little more wholesome and healthy. And I think you've just touched upon this whole area. Mekin, there was another thing I wanted to come back to. For me, the Newtonian example of Newton lying under a tree and the apple falling and him making the jump to say there's gravity is always a great metaphor for human intuition. And you also touched upon that. And this ability for AI, which only looks at past data, and the human mind, which is potentially capable of creating things that it's never seen before. How do you see these two coming together? I mean, do you see, in fact, just to give a little more clarity, in Unisense, when we built our merchandising product, we threw out 25 years of e-commerce where the technology is trying to guess what product a person's going to buy. And instead, we took that whole thing and created a tool that we give to the merchandiser and say, you can now use human intuition to drive the AI to help it make decisions. And so, so it really resonated with me. Do you see, people coming together? And I love one of the examples you gave me earlier, where you said one of the kids came up with an idea to do a snake detector. I mean, this is like human intuition at its best. And I just wanted to see, what's your experience with that? How do you see human intuition, AI coming together?
Yeah, no, I think deep question, Bharat. I think in my head, the combination of AI plus human imagination can be very, very powerful. Right? AI today cannot really imagine stuff. And I think it can accelerate a whole lot of problem solving and solutioning. It can also accelerate development of science. Right. So you brought in the gravity example or the example of figuring out that Earth is round. So to make any progress in science, you first need to imagine a hypothesis, right? That, oh, could the Earth be round? Right? And then you look for examples or you look for data. And that is the part that AI can do really well for you. Right? That, oh, let me collect all the data and share with you, like, oh, as in what meets the hypothesis and what breaks the hypothesis. So hopefully, and I think in the information area, we are already starting to see this, that science can start moving much faster, which is what we talked about in terms of diagnostics and health and so on. So that I feel is very powerful. But this idea of democratizing problem solving, right? So these two girls in very rural Andhra Pradesh coming up with a snake detector because they believe it can be done. They believe that, hey, as in India lost about 62,000 lives last year due to snake bites. And these two young girls in ninth grade took it upon themselves to create a snake detector that in rural parts of the country where there are a lot of farms, not enough lighting in the night when you step out, can there be a device that tells you that, hey, there might be a dangerous snake around, so be careful. I don't think these are problems that most of us imagine. And problem solving is very deeply linked to empathy, that you have to empathize with the set of customers that you're solving a problem for. And that's something that humans are much better at than AI is. Right. So this combination of empathy that kicks off the problem solving space and imagination on the other end, and in the middle, you can use technologies like AI to actually remove the drudgery from the solutioning and make solutioning a lot faster. But the empathy to, hey, what problems to solve, and the imagination, like, hey, what could the world become? I think both of those are areas which, to me, feel centrally human. And young people being equipped to do more of both, more of empathy and more of imagination, and the use of tools and not sterile environments where, hey, don't use AI or don't use tools, could lead to like a very powerful set of solutioning and creation for us.
Absolutely fascinating.
No, that's great. And Brad, I have to thank you because Mekin was able to kind of put together something you and I have talked about in the past six or seven webinars on how, again, AI, if used correctly, is a tool. It's not going to replace what you do today. It's only going to enhance what you do today. It's going to take out of that, take that minutia of the tedious aspects of development and allow you to be more creative. And I think that's where the creativity of a human being will never be replaced by AI. And so when we And I say this all the time, and again, it's becoming kind of repetitious, but the idea that we watch the news on a daily basis and we hear about AI replacing and doing all of this, and it's becoming a fear factor. We should embrace it. And the reality of it is that we shouldn't be afraid of it. We should look at it as a powerful tool that's going to allow us to be more creative and you know be more empathetic and look at solutions similar to these two young girls finding a solution so that people don't die of deadly snake bites. Which, I mean, we think about it, and sitting here in San Francisco, I don't worry about that. But in rural parts of all of the world, that's a real problem. And imagine without the use of AI, their ability to develop something like that just wouldn't happen. And so, that's where I mean, you could tell I'm kind of blown away because this really shows that we kind of cracked the egg on getting rid of this fear of AI and a real world example of the ability for people to think outside the norm and solve real world problems. So that's huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I feel there's been fear of technology to some extent, but now if you think about it, let's just take cars or railroads, right? Those as technological innovations have actually moved us ahead quite a bit, and you could have then thought that, hey, that's a technological change that will reduce jobs or take away jobs or impact us negatively. But if you think of them as tools, and I feel it's also useful to bring in the perspective of l- not letting the tools own or drive the agenda. Right, that if you think of them as tools, they can be very, very enabling and they can be very powerful. But like Tristan Harris talks about, how we've let some of these technologies or tools become a goal in itself, or like them to control human attention at any cost. So, are we driving things towards humans being better off versus the corporates that control technologies being better off? I think that's probably an area that we need to think about. That, hey, where are we allowing for addictions to come in, or uh, companies profiting at any cost? But outside of that, I do feel like very strongly that AI should be thought of as a powerful technology, which in the hands of the world, most people, will actually help people solve their own problems and create better futures for all of humanity.
Fabulous.
No, I mean,
Right,
Rob,
Kevin.
please, I don't know how to answer that. It's well said. I mean, I was thinking about getting back into Photoshop and making this three guys talking AI because that was the unfortunate part about it. You'd be right in the middle, and I don't know. But that was no. I mean, again, Brad, why don't you? Do you have anything to say, or
No, I love the model of, thinking about it from the standpoint of empathy and then imagination and then using AI to automate. And I've seen that my last 4 or 5 years has been exactly, along those lines, although I could never have articulated it that well. And I found that when we go from this model, the moment you start using AI, we ended up creating maybe 5 AI jobs in what we were doing, and about 35 non-AI jobs. Just because the empathy, I could now think along a different line. I could think of solving a problem I never solved before. And so I feel that there is this AI is a foundation that can actually let a lot of good things happen. But I also like Mekin's caveat that says, we also got to think about where it's going. And Kevin, the way you started, if 300 million jobs are going to disappear, it's time to have a concerted effort to make that transition a little easier. So I think it requires a lot more thoughtful and concerted effort, but it does require a lot of action.
No, that's so true. And again, this is great. I mean, one thing that Rod and I do, which I don't think any other podcast does, is we put together talking points, and then it kind of just flows. And sometimes when we're walking around Palo Alto, I don't know if it flowed as well as we thought it should, but this was great. And you know, again, I try to keep this to 30 minutes. We could, I feel like I want to talk for another 2 hours, and but I know you have a lot to do over there, and it's getting late here. But I want to thank both of you guys and making this was unbelievable. This was not only we talked about the impact of the job market in India, but we talked about a lot of other things. I guess to do a quick summary, based on this conversation, I think it's clear in the United States and both in India, you know, the outlook in terms of the impact of AI, there's both negative and positive. Compared to the United States, it seems like immediately, I don't think India is going to be um, impacted as much because that's just a different job market, and I guess not job market, but job industry and general workforce. I think automation is going to change the way we do everything. I mean, even this podcast, I think automation will change. But it also, presents new and really exciting opportunities. Um, Everything we've talked about from the moment we started this to this one, it requires you to embrace the AI technology. I mean, I think that's a must. Um, Also, I think it forces the labor force, both in the United States and India, to you can't stop learning. You have to continue to upskill. You need to foster innovation. And really, if you sit there and say, I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing today, yes, you will be displaced. I'm sorry. But that started back in the Industrial Revolution to today. So I think that's one thing that's huge. Um, One thing that I think came out of today, there's really that balance between embracing technology and kind of preserving the human element and making you couldn't have done it. I mean, there's no way I could have written a script or did enough research to present it the way you did. And I really believe it's that to it will never replace that human element, that innovation, the creativity. Um, and if you are not afraid of it, all it does is allow you to expand more and more into that space. So again, I want to thank you so much. This was great. I mean, you could tell I'm blown away, and I hope that if we throw an invitation out again, because one thing you talked about, which I never even kind of discussing, is that addiction element, gaming, that element of AI. And I would love for you to join us again, and we can dig deeper into that. So thank you again. And Bharat, always thank you so much. I look forward to you coming back, and I'm looking forward to grabbing our next lunch and talk about our next topic for Two Guys Talking AI.
Thank you so much.